What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. In this video, we will be covering the Neewer 20-inch Photo Studio Lightbox, and that's going to include everything from the setup to shooting with the Sony a7 III to editing all the pictures in Adobe Lightroom to bring out those colors and even apply brushes, and remove the background and create PNGs in Adobe Photoshop. And please remember, if you find any valuable information throughout this Lightbox video, please remember to hit the subscribe button right down there. Let's begin. Before we start unboxing the Lightbox, I'm just gonna go ahead and tell you the price, and it is $87 on Amazon, and you can find it by clicking the link in the description below. Alright, so this is how the Lightbox comes in its packaging, and this is basically its carrying case, and it's very convenient because everything that you're gonna need with the Lightbox has a certain spot within this case that's gonna keep it safe and secure and make sure that you're not gonna lose it or misplace it before one of your shoots. Also, there's nothing really on the back side of the case, just another handle. So I'm gonna go ahead and start unboxing. One thing that I would change is the Velcro, because that can get a little bit annoying, especially if you're setting the Lightbox up in a conference room or anywhere in general where you just want to keep the noise down. But it's really not that big of a deal. Anyways, this pocket right here on the front is where your charger is going to be. And you can disconnect the cord right here that leads to the back, but I find it easiest just to leave it plugged in so you don't have any cords hanging out or anything like that. And behind more Velcro, you would find all the user manuals, but I actually threw those away already. And also you'll find all your backdrops within the Lightbox, which makes it easy for storing. And sometimes it does take a little bit of time to smooth out that crease just so you don't get as much reflection whenever you're shooting with the Lightbox. And the backdrops that this Lightbox came with are black, gray, a neutral where you can kind of do some hue changing and get that tone that you want, and white, which is what we'll be using today because white is the easiest to create PNGs with. Although you can really create PNGs with any color, but we're just wanting that contrast. And quickly, before we set up the rest of the Lightbox, I want to go through the specs on Amazon just in case you guys are interested. So this is a dimmable 3000 to 6500 Kelvin Photo Studio Lightbox, 20 inches shooting tint like I mentioned before, and there are 160 LED lights, 4 color backdrops, and the official colors are gray, orange, I guess, white, and black. And it's perfect for multi-angle shooting from the top and the side, as you will see in the demonstration. So, like I said, for this video, we are using white. So I'm gonna set the rest of the colors to the side. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and unclip this, set it to the side, undo the Velcro. So this is the side that you can shoot from, and then this piece is the top. And this is how it will sit normally. So this piece here is the side flap that you can shoot from, but sometimes I choose to leave this down actually just because of how many more angles I can get without this material getting in my way. And remember, if you ever get confused, just remember that the cord comes out of the top and you'll be good. So the next step is to put the white sheet in. And the way I do it is the Velcro tabs here will go towards the top, and then you'll have the crease like so. Sometimes when you go to put the white sheet in, you actually have to readjust the Velcro a little bit out. And the bottom of this white sheet will tuck under the reflective material. And as for the top of the white, it does actually have a little small spot that it's meant to tuck under, but I always find it constantly falling, so I actually use duct tape. Almost anyone who does any type of content creation will tell you that duct tape is their best friend. Okay, so I just got done finishing the duct tape, and it was a really tedious task, but it was definitely worth it. As you can kind of see right here, the trick is to basically tape the top of the white sheet to the very top, avoiding this little skirt here. And also I tape the skirt up because if I don't, it'll drag down a lot more and it won't diffuse the light as well. Also, I found that the Lightbox works best if you tape the white sheet to the sidewalls too, just for that extra support and so you don't have to readjust in the middle of your shoot. With all that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and plug in the Lightbox, place in the model, and show you guys the angles and tricks to get the best pictures the first time. So it looks like here on the power control, we're going to have the ability to go up to 40 watts. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn it on. See, you get a little flicker of light right there when you first turn it on. So the ISO on my camera right now is actually a little bit high. So this is actually the lowest setting of the Lightbox. Another thing that's important to note about the Lightbox is that the wider your aperture is, like f2.8, the less brighter the Lightbox will need to be. It really just depends if you want everything in focus, like at f11, or if you want a shallow depth of field, like at f2.8, as I said before. But I just want to say first that you have so much more ability to edit your pictures when you take them with a DSLR that can shoot raw images compared to your phone, which is going to output a more compressed file. So I really want to recommend that when you're shooting Lightbox photos with a DSLR camera, that you're shooting in both RAW and JPEG format, so you'll have two file outputs. And the reason that you're shooting in both RAW and JPEG format is number one, RAW format is going to be what's capturing all your data much more than JPEG, but you also want the JPEG file format because it's much faster to skip through when organizing your photos and sorting through them, because each one of the RAW files is like 50 megabytes and it takes a little bit on your computer to load, and even that split second longer that it takes is going to add up over time. Also, make sure you hit that subscribe button because I will be getting a macro lens very soon and be doing another Lightbox related video on that, and that will open up so many more marketing opportunities that you'll be able to do. So make sure you hit that button down below and stay tuned. Alright, so our props we'll be using are 2 notebooks due to copyright issues and a pen. So I'll be showing you the best angles and focal length to use with your camera when shooting on the Lightbox with the Sony a7 III and the Tamron 28 to 75mm lens, and I will link both of those down in the description as well. So when I'm shooting shots on the Lightbox, there's a couple angles I like to get. The first angle is the eye level straight on angle that really just shows the front face of the product. I think this is an important shot to get because it's something that almost all clients want, especially when creating PNG versions so it can go on websites, flyers, and more. Another important angle that I like to get is really similar to this angle, but it is basically just the camera raised up and the lens tilted down. This basically gives a bird's eye view of the product and is great for online menus. I also like to take pictures of the product from the side. This is because it gives the product a much more three-dimensional look and makes it pop. It's important to mention that whatever angles you end up choosing is completely up to your own creativity. They always say trial and error, and I feel like it's really important when it comes to Lightboxes. Every product is different and you just have to work around with it until you get it to look right. Once your shooting session is complete and you have your RAW and JPEG images on your camera, it's time to transfer them to your computer so you can start editing them in Adobe Lightroom.
Alright, so I've transferred all the pictures to my desktop, as you can see right here. And this is why it's important to shoot in both RAW and JPEG, because you can see here the JPEG version will load a lot faster than the RAW does. But the JPEG versions are only for viewing and there's no reason to import those into Adobe Lightroom. So if we go through here again, we can just select the RAW photos, right click, open with, other, and I prefer Adobe Lightroom Classic. So the first window that'll come up is our 2 pictures that we've chosen to import. So we'll go ahead and select that, and we'll also be on develop, which is very important because that's going to allow us to make all of our adjustments. So if you come down here, you can see we have 2 pictures in our editing queue. So the first thing that I always like to do is the cropping and lens corrections. So if we scroll down, we can hit enable profile corrections, and then it'll automatically sense what lens you use most of the time. If not, you can go through all this and select which one you used. And as far as cropping, I always like to do either 4:3 or 1:1, just because I find those are the best ratios to use. So I like to center it up, resize a little bit if necessary, but the main viewer that I always look at is this one here, just because I find it gives me a much better image of what the final thing is going to look like. That looks good. Okay, so now that we have that done, I like to edit the background first next, and then we can get into all the brushes and stuff after that. I always just start from top to bottom, start with the exposure. We will keep our histogram in mind as we do this. And the main thing I'm looking for is to pull out this white, but I also want the books to be the center of the image. Add a little bit of saturation. So after we have that done, it's time to move to the brush. So you can actually just click select subject and it should work, or you can click the brush and just do it manually. I'm gonna try select subject. And as you see, it worked pretty good. It missed this here just because it's white on white, so you can't really blame it. But let's go ahead and bump up this exposure. Already starting to look much, much better. The brushes are what makes the difference because you can adjust only a certain part of the image instead of the image as a whole. For example, if you were to edit the image as a whole and pull down the shadows, it's going to do that to everything instead of what is selected with your brush here. So that's the difference maker. I always like to bring down the shadows too because that adds some of that contrast back. I mess with the blacks a lot just because, again, I don't like it to be too contrasty. And then we can mess with the saturation again if we choose. I'd like to add a little bit more just so it really, really pops. And after you do this, you can even add another brush and bring down the brightness of the background. But I'm actually going to create a PNG with this image, so I'm not going to worry about that right now. So we can go ahead and click done. And then don't forget, we still have the second picture here. So I always just copy everything from the first picture except for the masks, and then start off by pasting them on the second picture, which you can see we got some of that bokeh in there right now as the pen is in focus. If you didn't want this to happen, you would actually just shoot at a higher number aperture. So after that, I just go through the settings again and adjust accordingly for this picture. So this picture is a little bit brighter. I'm gonna bring down that a little too saturated, pull that back. The whites are very, very white, so I'm going to pull those back a little bit. And it's important to notice that our brush isn't on here yet either. Now to add the brush, we can just select the subject again. So as you can see here, we may or may not have missed some things. You can tell here that it went a little outside what we were wanting. So I'm just going to delete this, restart with the brush, do it manually. So now that we have it selected, we can boost that exposure, drop some of our shadows to make it pop, and that's just going to pull out that sharpness of the pen right there. Say maybe, you know, the pen is what's for sale here. This picture might work since that's what the focus is. So now that we have that done, it's time to export for Adobe Photoshop to move the imperfections in the background, like this little spot here, and so we can have that transparent background. So first, we're going to want to select both of our images within Library and export. We can just put them to desktop, custom name, and then since we have multiple, I always switch it to custom name X of Y, and that's just Photoshop ready 1 of 2, keeps it simple, right to our desktop, and export. So now that we have our files exported and on our desktop, we can select them, open with Adobe Photoshop 2022. And this process here is very, very simple. So I actually exported them as PSDs, which just makes it easier to preserve all that information and just open it directly within Photoshop. So in order to first remove the imperfections and then create a transparent background, we will remove this lock. And the first thing that I'm going to do is just grab this spot healing brush tool. And that is really all we need. And we also will have to convert this to a smart object. And then for extra step, I just like to rasterize the layer. So we will adjust our size of the brush, zoom in, and then we're just going to start removing these little imperfections right here. And based on the size of the imperfection is the size that your brush will need to be. Because basically whatever you're clicking, it's going to look at the pixels around that area and try to guess a pattern that's going to fill that area the most to look like those pixels. Now that you have all of that done with the imperfections, it's time for us to create the transparent version. And for that, we're going to select the polygonal lasso tool. This is basically a straight line selection tool where we are going to cut around this entire image, trying to stay as close on the edge as we can, and then making selections throughout this whole image. And I will explain what we do after that, but let's fast forward. And so as you're selecting, you can close the selection, and once you have that selection, just press delete, and that is going to delete the picture and give you this transparent layer that we're looking for. And we'll continue to do this to the whole image. And now that we have this last portion selected, we can soon delete it. And as simple as that, we are now ready to export this image as a PNG. So I always like to center it up, and then we'll go to File, Export, Export As, change this to PNG. We can adjust with the scale if we want to reduce the size of our file. For instance, if this is too big of a file, we could reduce this to 90 and it will decrease the file size dramatically. But I just usually keep it at 100. And PNG is the file type with the transparent background. If we were to try to export this as JPEG, it would not work. So if we just click export, I again name my file something different here. Whatever the final title of the file that I want to be, this is your final version. So this is where you will name it. And if I have two angles, I usually will type something like book 01, so I can also have a book 02, and click save. And that will export your PNG image as it's supposed to. You repeat that entire process with this image as well, and that's how you'll get it done. I know it's a time-consuming process, but you really want to pay a lot of attention to detail when you're making your selections, because if you have a bad selection, that's going to throw off the whole authenticity of the PNG. So make sure you're putting a lot of attention to detail into that. We can come look at the final PNG, and here we are.
If you guys found any value in this video, please remember to hit that subscribe button down below. I make all kinds of videos on how to create digital art, so if that sounds interesting to you, you came to the right place. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.